If you watched the short video before this one, you already know how this story begins. I looked at my routine lab results. One number stopped me in my tracks. My A1C was 6.2%. That's prediabetes. And the only thought running through my mind was, how did this happen to me? If this is the first time you're finding my channel, let me quickly catch you up. I'm a registered nurse. I have a PhD in nursing, which just means that I've done research about nursing. I've spent years caring for patients in the ER and the ICU, studying health and reading medical research. So when I became pre-diabetic, I wasn't embarrassed. I was a bit confused. Not because I didn't know what prediabetes was. I took care of a lot of patients that had diabetes. And the reason I was confused was because I thought I understood the story. It turns out I only understood the ending. I didn't really understand how the story began with my prediabetes. That question stayed with me for weeks. How could I feel healthy, I exercise regularly, I understand chronic disease, and still become pre-diabetic? The more I thought about it, the more I realized I was asking the wrong question. I kept asking, how do I lower my A1C? But that assumes the A1C is the problem. What if it's only the clue that completely changed my perspective? So I stopped trying to find the best diet because I already technically had a good diet. I stopped looking for the fastest solution, and the internet is full of them. Instead, I started looking or trying to answer one question. What was my body trying to tell me? And that question became the beginning of this journey. The first thing I discovered surprised me. I had always thought prediabetes was a blood sugar problem, and a lot of people do. Well, and that seems obvious, doesn't it? We check blood sugar. We diagnose diabetes with blood sugar. We worry about blood sugar. So naturally, I assumed blood sugar, blood glucose, was where the story began. But the more I learned, the more I realized something that completely changed the way I looked at my diagnosis. And blood sugar wasn't the first thing that changed. It was one of the last things we noticed. Think about that for a second. If that's true, then something else must have been changing long before my A1C ever reached 6.2. So, what was it? That question then led me to one word that I'd heard hundreds of times throughout my career, and that is insulin. I knew what insulin was. I'd explained it to my patients. I learned it in school, but suddenly I wasn't trying to explain insulin to someone else. I was trying to understand what insulin had been doing inside my body. And strangely enough, those are two different things. So I went back to the beginning, not to memorize another definition, but to understand the story behind my prediabetes. Every time we eat foods containing carbohydrates, whether that's rice, oatmeal, fruit, our digestive system breaks those foods down into glucose. Glucose is fuel. It's so important. Your brain needs it. Your muscles need it. Your heart needs it. Without glucose, your body simply wouldn't function. It's essential. And that realization was important because it meant glucose wasn't the enemy, because your body does need it. My body wasn't trying to get rid of glucose. It was trying to use it, which raised another question. If glucose is supposed to be there and is important, why wasn't it getting where it needed to go? Why was it so high? And that's where insulin enters this story. I started thinking about insulin in a way I never had before. Not as a hormone on a diagram, but as part of a conversation happening inside my body every time I ate. I imagined glucose standing outside my cells, ready to be used by those cells, and insulin acting like the key that opens the door. When everything is working well and it's humming along, the system is almost effortless. You eat, insulin is released, the door opens, glucose moves into the cell, and energy is produced. And the whole process is beautifully coordinated, which made my next question even more interesting. If insulin already had the key, why was glucose beginning to stay in my bloodstream? Well, that answer turned out to be the biggest clue of them all: insulin resistance. Not because insulin disappeared, not because the key broke, but because the lock had slowly started responding differently. And the remarkable part is that my body didn't simply give up. It essentially adapted. And my pancreas quietly started producing more insulin, more keys, trying harder to open the same doors for years. It probably worked, which explains something I never fully appreciated until this happened to me. My blood sugar could stay normal while my body already was working much harder behind the scenes. That's why my diagnosis suddenly made more sense. My A1C being above normal wasn't telling me where the story started. It was telling me the story had been unfolding for quite a while. And that naturally led to another question. Why in the heck would my body become resistant to insulin in the first place? And that question will be answered in the next video. See you soon. Bye-bye.